Good afternoon, and we are so delighted that you are here with us. Thank you for joining us, and we trust that your experience here this afternoon with us will be rewarding in many ways. Welcome to the second in a two-part series of college and career readiness. In conjunction with the Lake Union Conference Communications Department, the Education Department of the Lake Union Conference, in our desire to continue to support our students and their families in their preparedness for high school and college and school in general, we have put our heads together to endeavor to come up with ways that we can support. And so we had 2 weeks ago a college and career readiness session, which dealt with how students can maximize their college experience. And that also reached into high school as well. Today, we want to focus on how students can experience successful outcomes in virtual online learning. We have experts in that field who will be sharing with us from their wealth of knowledge. Also, an age-old question, how can I better support myself through college financially? And we have an expert who's going to share with us untapped financial resources as to how we can accomplish that successfully. We want to welcome this evening these experts who are joining us, and we ask that God will continue to bless our time together as we share with you from our hearts and from our experiences. So welcome to all of you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Horton, our Associate Education Superintendent for the Lake Union Conference. I'm Debbie Michel, and I'm the Associate Communication Director for the Lake Union. And just to tell you a little bit about who we are, the Lake Union Conference is comprised of 89,000 members in 4 states. We're in Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And so we thank you so much for joining us today. Those of you who are watching, you are welcome to participate via in our chat for Facebook and for YouTube, your questions and comments. We welcome that. And so without any further ado, we will just have a brief prayer, then we'll introduce our guest. Let's pray. Our Father God, we are just so grateful for this opportunity. Once again, here we are, inching toward the new school year, and forward, Father, so many unknowns, but God, thank you so much for the opportunity to start planning and start preparing. And so we thank you for the opportunity to present these experts to be able to share their knowledge for the students who will be going out, or whether doing, they'll be able to take information that will be able to show how much you care for them and how much you love them and how much you want the best for them to succeed. And so we thank you for this opportunity once again. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, and so we will hand this back over to Dr. Horton, our Associate Superintendent for Education, who will introduce our guests.
Thank you, Debbie. We are so delighted this afternoon to welcome Mr. Alton Conwell. He's a native of New York, born and raised in the Highbridge section of the South Bronx. He relocated to Washington, D.C. at the age of 20. Alton has been in the field of accounting, finance throughout his professional career. He was introduced to Oakwood University by his wife, the former Patty Thomas, an Oakwood alumna. Alton has been employed at Oakwood since 1999, and he's held various positions there. Currently, he's the default prevention coordinator and assistant director of student accounts in the student accounts department of the finance division at Oakwood University in Huntsville, Alabama. Welcome so much to be here. We are glad that you're here, Mr. Conwell.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I also thank the Lake region for allowing me to utilize this platform to inform others of the plethora of opportunities that are out there aside from cost. My platform will provide you of various amount of ways other than student loans that are causing this country some hardships, that can allow you to pay for your education in a manner that doesn't affect you in a negative way. So I do thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you so much. We also would like to welcome to our forum this afternoon, Ms. LaRonda Forsey. Ms. Forsey has served 35 years as an educator in Adventist education. She holds a master's degree in educational administration and has worked for 15 years with online education. She's also worked and lived overseas in Jordan and Kenya for 7 total years. She has served at Forest Lake Academy, Maxwell Academy, Campion Academy, Atlanta Adventist Academy. These have all been her previous places of employment. Currently, Ms. Forsey serves as the principal of Griggs International Academy, and she wears some hats which keep her busy. She's also the Associate Dean of the School of Education and International Partners, and she's served in that capacity for 9 years. Ms. Forsey is looking for better ways to help Adventist families navigate education in a highly complicated world. Welcome, Ms. Forsey.
Thank you so much for letting me join you today. This is a very complicated time, and I'm just glad to be able to join you in this relevant topic to help families navigate through this.
Thank you so much. And then we are delighted to have Mr. Ben Kreiter with us this afternoon. Mr. Kreiter is a course designer at Griggs International Academy. Before that, he has taught Bible in person and online at Forest Lake Academy. Mr. Kreiter holds a degree in religious education and will graduate with a master's in educational leadership in May. His passion is spending time with his wife, his kids, and sharing the Bible with students all around the world. Mr. Kreiter has been at the center of the new Bible Encounter curriculum, which has caused such a positive stir in our denomination. Welcome, Mr. Kreiter.
Thank you for having me. I was thinking back to my first online class, and I was helpless and lost. And I hope that those of you that are watching who this is either a choice or forced into by circumstances and are feeling stressed will leave here feeling energized and confident that you can have a successful online experience.
Well, thank you so much. Well, at this time, we're going to launch into, I know you have a plethora of things that you can share with us. Time does not permit, the 90-minute time frame that we have does not allow, but we'll do our best to glean from you as much as we possibly can. So at this time, we're going to begin with Ben and LaRonda, who are going to share with us about maximizing virtual learning experiences. So initially, when we thought of this idea, we were focused on high school and college experience, but we recognized that since the concept of virtual learning is no longer a concept, it's something that we're living and breathing from pre-K all the way through, then what you're going to be sharing with us is even more relevant and important. So just going to give you an opportunity now to, Ben, to just share with us some opening statements, and then followed by LaRonda.
Thank you. One of the things that I want to clarify right from the beginning is that when we say virtual learning or online education, there's not just one kind. There's actually several different ways that this can happen. And so the first kind I want to talk about is synchronous learning. And this is where most of the instruction is going to be delivered live by a teacher through video conferencing software like we're using today. And so your class schedule might follow something similar to a normal class schedule. You have this class at a certain time, your next class following, and the school kind of dictates your schedule to you a little bit. And that means you have to be present when the school expects you to be present. The next kind of distance learning is called asynchronous. And basically asynchronous learning means that you have a lot of flexibility to move your own pace. So instead of your content primarily being delivered by an instructor, what's actually happening is that you're accessing online resources. This might be PDF handouts, video clips, listening to something. Maybe you're watching a lecture, but you can pick and choose. And this type of learning is very flexible. So some students can do work for a week and then leave to go on a family trip for a week and come back right where they left off. And they haven't missed out on anything because they're driving the schedule and how it happens. The final kind is sort of a blend between the two, and that's called semi-synchronous. And so what might happen here is that you might meet with your teacher twice a week for an hour, and they're going to answer questions, they're going to assign work, they're going to explain concepts, and then you're going to work on your own pace the rest of the week. And so this is sort of a blend between this. And depending on what kind of program you're in, you need to kind of figure out which one of these best describes my program, because that's going to really help guide you in what sort of practical advice and tips that you hear today you're going to need to follow and which ones don't really apply to you. And then I want to turn things over to Principal Forsey as she explains a little bit more.
Probably in the last 3 or 4 months, more students and teachers have been going to school online than ever before. And it was kind of a very sudden change. And there's some things that we're going to share with you today that will hopefully have an impact on you if you are doing online learning. And a friend shared an article with me this week, and it was from a site called Grown and Flown. And it talked about being a good student online. And the whole article is about sitting in the front row virtually. And so we'll be presenting some of those ideas as we go through too, to help you engage in online learning. Thank you.
I'm not sure if we can hear Debbie, but our next question, or at least a presentation, is going to be done by Mr. Conwell. If you could just share with us briefly just an introductory comments on maximizing untapped financial resources.
Well, let me just say that scholarships are an opportunity in which many people tend not to take advantage of because they believe that it's just something that they can't achieve. And it's unfortunate that the concept is in their mind that it's unattainable, because scholarships just take effort. And the manner in which scholarships can be obtained is just through doing your due diligence. Many people think that scholarships are strictly for the cream of the crop student, or specifically the person who is just totally destitute. And there's so many different opportunities out there regarding scholarships and grant money that can easily finance a college education. And throughout the evening, what I will do, according to the questions that I receive, I will try to answer to the best of my ability each and every one of them in a manner that will provide some type of confidence and understanding that scholarships can be obtained by anyone. So there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Conwell. Well, we're gonna move right now into our question and answer segment, which you've been eagerly anticipating. We'll start with Principal Aranda Forsey, our first question to her. And our question is, what should I take into consideration, Ms. Forsey, when setting up my workspace, my study environment as an online learner?
Thank you for that question, because it's very important. It's so tempting to set up your study time and your class time in a comfortable place. because you do have that flexibility being at home. However, if you get too comfortable, you might fall asleep and miss something important. So I'm going to suggest that you do set up a nice office type area, and you make sure that you have really good internet, because that will make life a lot easier. You might even want a printer, and find a place that'll help you stay alert. Usually being in a clean, quiet, good lighting, organized area is really good. Some people think having music going on, having earbuds in and having music going helps. For some people that might be true, but you need to make sure that you don't have distractions for you. So, have some storage area so your books are organized in there when you need them. Sit in a web camera friendly place where there's good lighting, because sometimes you will be online with your class or your teacher.
Thank you. I mean, you and Mr. Kreiter, you live in this world administering this kind of education, and Griggs International Academy has this history in our church as a groundbreaking institution in that realm. And so, Mr. Kreiter, this question is for you. I'm not a morning person. Somebody may be asking or thinking, I'm not a morning person. So with that reality, how do I best plan for my online classes?
Yeah, I think we talked about the types. If you have some sort of flexible scheduling, the simplest answer is just schedule your learning for a later time. One of the freeing things about online learning is that sometimes it creates an opportunity where your school day can start at 10 a.m. instead of at 7 or 8 a.m. So if you can do that, the easiest solution is just to do that. It's okay to dedicate learning time for when you can best learn. If you don't have as much control, maybe you have to watch a lecture or participate in some sort of group activity. One of the things that I find helps me when I'm feeling a little bit groggy is to actually set my computer up in a place where I can stand and watch. And sometimes I'll even go as far as putting something where I have to work on my balance a little bit to help keep me awake. I'll set a book down and stand on the edge of the book. I know it sounds a little weird, but nobody can see it. You're home and your camera is faced up here. So sometimes I'll just stand and I'll make sure that I can move my legs a little bit, keep the blood flowing. And finally, just make sure that you're eating something to sort of wake yourself up.
Thank you.
Excellent tips so far. All right, so Mr. Conwell, my question, and you caught attention when you said there's scholarships out there for everyone. So perhaps you can begin by telling us what are the different kinds of scholarships there are. You can give us a broad overview of the types of scholarships.
There are an enormous amount of scholarships and varieties of scholarships that are available that, unfortunately, this is just about education. And if you're not educated on where to obtain them, you're limited on what the opportunities are. But there are types of scholarships that go from the typical elite, educated, brilliant individual to someone who may literally be female, 4'11", and left-handed. So, I mean, your opportunities and the variety that is there span an enormous load that, like I said, anyone can obtain scholarship funds. One of my favorite is Flavor of the Month, where you compare yourself to a flavor of ice cream and write an essay as to why.
All right. Some good information there. And the next question is for Ms. Forsey. There are, different styles of learning, and how can you help someone figure out what is the best style of learning for them? What's the best learn?
Everybody has a different way of learning, actually, and often the teacher tends to teach the way that they learned the most. So sometimes you have to compensate for that if you learn differently. One of the things that I suggest is trying different things. If you have a hard time retaining what you're reading, then try to find an audio version of that, or just read it out loud, or even read it while you're walking. That also helps you retain information. One of the things that's really important for students to figure out is what works for them as far as the time of day to do the hardest activities. So if your mind is clear in the morning, then do the work that is the hardest for you, and know how to prioritize what's best for you. But also look for different options. For example, when there's a project, there might be options. So choose the one that fits you the best. And you can even take some kind of little surveys to see what your learning style is. But I suggest this for everybody in online learning, especially if you're listening to a lecture or some kind of video that's teaching you something, or you're reading something. Take notes and try to do it by hand even, so that it will go through and up into your brain and stick there. Prioritize your tasks, and try to listen as carefully as you can during class time if it is synchronous, and just choose how you will use your executive skills. The executive skills that you learn in online learning are going to be skills that you will use for the rest of your career. So you want to try to learn to be organized and figure out the things that are going to work for you.
Thank you for those insights. Mr. Conwell, this next question has to do with what are some good tips for finding scholarships in my community? It's actually a two-part question. What are some good tips for finding scholarships in my community, and how do I start looking for those scholarships and grants?
Well, just to piggyback on what Principal Forsythe just indicated, being organized is a critical tip in creating a foundation for what you're planning to do. By tapping into some of the local businesses, such as your Best Buys or your local supermarket, whether it be Walmart or Target or Kroger, businesses such as that cater to your community often have scholarship programs that are often untapped, and people are unaware of the things that they provide the community, especially students. And in tapping into some of your more known local businesses, you'd be surprised what they have existing programs in place that will support not only current students, but incoming students, such as your juniors and seniors about to embark on a college education. I know that many of your banks often offer scholarship opportunities that you just need to do a little research. I know just about every single teenager on the face of the planet has a cell phone now. It's definitely in the United States. And you can do research through your phone just by looking up a business or an organization that you may have a reason to contact or connect with, just to find out if they have a scholarship program or a philanthropic component to their enterprise. And you'd be surprised what you can come up with.
Well, thank you. God desires for each of us to be good stewards, whether we putting into place those executive skills that He's blessed us with, or that we are nurturing, or whether it's in the matter of financial stewardship. So all the things that you are sharing certainly do resonate, and we could see how they could be used and maximized so that we could be more whole beings in the truest sense of the word. So we appreciate that. I have a question for Mr. Kreiter. And it's, I have issues. I have a lot of issues, it seems like, right? I have issues with time management, and would appreciate any insights you can provide on how best to leverage my time as an online learner.
So when it comes to this, I have, or at least very much had issues. I had to withdraw from my very first online class because my professor said, "You are so far behind, I don't think you'll pass this class. And this is the last day to withdraw." And so I walked down to their office and signed out the paperwork. And the next time I took an online class, I had to sit down and figure out, what am I going to do differently to make this work? And I think probably the biggest thing I can say, and it seems so obvious, but it's easy to neglect, is schedule that time. When I took my first class that I was not successful in, I thought, well, I'll just do it in the evenings when I'm doing my homework, or I'm sure I'll find time during the week. And I find that what you plan for is what you have time for. So I'm currently a student in an online program, and I set aside time on Sunday because that's the first day of my week. And usually everything's due the following Sunday in the evening. So I sit down Sunday morning and I look over and I say, what do I have to do this week? What do I need to read? What do I need to turn in? What kinds of group projects might I need to do? And then I come up with a schedule based on my week's work that's going to work for me. And sometimes it looks like late in the evening, looks like first thing in the morning, but I specifically schedule time to where if somebody comes to me and says, "Can you help with this?" or "We have plans," I say, that's actually my class time. And I treat it just like I would be attending an in-person class and I would be expected to be there. Beyond that, I think a big thing is making sure that you're not getting distracted on your computer. I talk with a lot of students who say, I sit down to do my homework and then I get stuck on YouTube for 2 hours. There's a lot of great tools and extensions for your browser that you can block certain sites during certain time periods. Depending on your computer and the browser you use, you can look at setting something up that says you cannot be anywhere but where you need to be for your homework for the next 2 hours. Give yourself a sort of digital accountability partner, so to speak.
Well, thank you.
All right. I love the transparency. And so, Mr. Conwell, you have told us so far that there are scholarships available for literally, I guess, all kinds of scenarios and different places where you can go and start inquiring, businesses and banks. So if I've now found a place that perhaps I'd like to target, perhaps you can give me some tips on how do I go about applying for that scholarship?
Glad you asked. Diligence and follow through. It's a situation where, okay, if you understand that a scholarship is being offered and you know that you are eligible, by reviewing exactly what the scholarship criteria is, you look to see exactly if you are truly eligible for it. Otherwise, you just don't want to waste your time applying for something that for one reason or another, you're not eligible to apply for. But once you realize that you are eligible and that you're qualified to apply for it, you research the organization, get a little history on who it is that's offering this opportunity, these funds to assist you in paying for your education. You, in many cases, will have to write an essay. The common essay is usually a little information on who you are, what your intentions are, your aspirations, your ideas, your major, possibly what may have caused you to choose the major that you're in. And it's basically a manner in which you provide information that goes with that application on allowing a scholarship provider to select, or better select who they want to award. So basically, by placing some type of character of who you are to your application is what is your best ally. So sometimes it will start off with an essay. One of the strategies that I consistently tell students is to find a way to follow up on that application. Communicate via email, find a phone number, call up the organization, ask if they have a scholarship department and if there's somebody that you can speak with. Because what that does, it gives you an opportunity to now engage with someone. And basically, Applying for a scholarship is no different than applying for a job. You're getting paid. In your efforts, you get your rewards. In the case of a scholarship, just like a job application, if you put it out there, eventually you want to find out, if you haven't gotten a response, whether or not the position has been filled. Do they still intend to have the award granted to someone if it has not been done already? Are you still in the running? All those things that you're interested in doing, but often we don't ask because we're thinking we're bothering someone. But if you wanted that job bad enough, you'd find out. Same thing with a scholarship opportunity. You follow up and you ask, first off, if they've received your application. Once they communicate and confirm that they've received it, then you ask them, well, is there anything that I can do on my behalf to improve my chances of receiving your award? Again, that lets the scholarship provider know that you are truly interested, that you're willing to go above and beyond the common requirement of just submitting an application. You've showed them that you're diligent and you're resourceful for the simple fact that you found them, because in many situations, scholarship opportunities or applications don't provide a contact name or number, but you have already gone above and beyond the call of duty to get a means of communication together to respond to an individual. So it takes effort. That's what it takes. And basically, as a student, knowing that we don't have money, your most valuable commodity is your time and how you invest it in applying for the scholarships that are out there.
Okay. I want to ask a follow-up question to
Sure.
that, because there might be students who are listening, and you've mentioned, going that extra mile, and that the folks who are offering these scholarships, they're usually impressed that you have taken the time to seek them out. So but it's not advertised in terms of, call this number or,
Right.
Here's the email address to follow up. Perhaps there's some tips that you have for students in terms of who want to go that extra mile. What are some of those things that you might recommend that they do to find these people?
Well, in all actuality, students are extremely resourceful. The generation that is following us, technologically, they are exceptionally resourceful. Case in point, the movements that are taking place in our country right now that go from coast to coast. And it's usually social media and technology that provides information to be transmitted across the country instantaneously. So they can actually use their phone and research anything they want. They can download songs and they can download just about anything that they're really interested in. Why not use the same capabilities and technology that's available to them each and every single day to put a little time into researching an organization that could potentially provide them funds that will help them pay for their education, allowing them not to sign their names off to get loans and acquire debt that will be waiting for them once they finish their college degree.
So you've mentioned that four-letter word, that dreaded four-letter word, loan.
Yes. Yes.
If someone finds themselves in a situation where they have taken on a loan, what are some of the things that they can do to perhaps extricate themselves as quickly as possible, or to pay back that loan?
Well, I mean, there's a number of repayment plans that are out there. If you're currently in school, your loans are automatically in deferment. So they're waiting for you upon separating from the institution, which in this case is dropping out, or graduation. If you happen to have a job, you can actually start paying on your loans while you're even in school, which minimizes or lessens the interest that builds on that loan. As you're currently in school, if by whatever means you end up applying for scholarships within a given semester and you are blessed with being awarded, if you are awarded to the extent that it pays for your education while you are in the current semester, the loans that you have accepted for your education during that semester, you can contact your financial aid department and let them know that you would like to give those loans back to the federal government because you no longer have need for them. So even as you're in school, as you are taking on the effort and energy of finding additional funding through scholarship providing to pay for your education, if, like I said, if you are blessed enough to pay for it, by all means, send back your loans. If you're obtaining money through a job that you have while you're in school, by all means, use some of those funds. Even though I know you have living expenses, start paying back on your loans to minimize the debt that you have waiting for you at the end of your educational experience. I was blessed to have a son who took advantage of applying for scholarships. True, I did work for the denomination and there was a benefit that I definitely allowed him to take advantage of, but that only took care of part of his expenses. He did what he needed to do in applying for additional loans, and as a recent graduate who graduated from Oakwood a week ago, he graduated as a debt-free graduate. And I, as well as he, even though he may not know it to the extent that I know it, we are truly blessed of him doing that.
Thank you
Wow.
for those insightful responses. We have a couple questions on coming in from YouTube and Facebook. We thank you, our online viewers, for engaging in this discussion with us. From Juan Jose Medina, thank you. He says his question is specifically for Principal Forsey, and he wants to know, Principal Forsey, how can I apply to a university in the USA or in my country? Thank you so much, he says.
Okay, that is right now that's somewhat of a challenging one, but you can definitely apply to a university, and you can go online to whatever university you're looking at and see what they're expecting for that application. And then once you have been accepted, you actually have to apply for SEVIS so that you can get an international visa to come to a university in the US. So a lot depends on your grades, and one of the things for an American university often is how you have done with your ACT or SAT test also.
Thank you. Marcelino Baina has a question, but I'm not sure. I probably want to ask Mr. Baina to just write in his question again. He says his question has to do with the classes. Will it be with other kids or no? So I wasn't sure specifically what, Mr. Baina, what you're referring to, your question having to do with the classes. It could have been related to something that was talked about before. So unless one of the panelists understands exactly what he's targeting. So we'll give him an opportunity to just write that question in again. In the meantime, let's go to another question we have for our panelists. It's for Ms. Principal Forsey, and it has to do with this. What are the must-have technology skills for an online learner in elementary, high school, and college? It may differ, but what are the must-have online skills for these categories of learners?
Okay, well, one thing that's really interesting to me is how technology is really kind of a natural thing for young people today. They don't even have to learn it. It just kind of comes natural for them. So probably the typical things, especially for high school and university students, is knowing how to make a document, being able to put something in a Dropbox, making a video, PowerPoint, Prezi, those kinds of things. And I've even seen very young students do those types of things, and they might use the help of their parents for some of that. But one of the things that I find that these young digital natives forget to do sometimes is to read the directions. And so reading and following directions, I know that sounds simple, but that probably solves almost every problem that you would have in online learning, because you don't necessarily have a teacher always looking over your shoulder telling you exactly what to do at every minute, but they probably wrote out what to do. And so following those directions is very important.
Thank you. Next question for Ben seems like all of my questions have to do with problems that I have. So thank you for helping me work through these. I find it easier to fade into the background during a lecture or presentation, which means I can be more easily distracted or not as attentive. How can I increase and improve my degree of attentiveness as an online learner? What tips do you have for me?
Yeah, I think probably the best way to think of technology in general is that it's an extension of something that we're already doing. So email is just an extension of mail. A phone call is an extension of a conversation. And watching a lecture online is just an extension of watching a lecture in a classroom. And so actually a lot of the tips that would help you in the classroom are also going to help you in online learning. You don't have to relearn or reinvent the wheel. You can kind of do a lot of the same things that you might find helpful in a classroom setting. So taking notes during a lecture helps a lot of people, and you can do that while it's online. If you in class are sitting next to somebody and they're talking and causing disruption and you can't pay attention, you might try moving somewhere else. And in online learning, it's the same thing. If you've got a lot of disruption and chaos in the background, you might need to move to a different location. And the nice thing about online learning is you actually have a lot more flexibility when it comes to your surroundings and how you conduct yourself than you would in a classroom. If you're not on camera and it helps you to walk around and pace in circles, do that, because it's probably not going to bother anybody. So just kind of think about what are the things that when I'm listening to someone in person help me focus, and how do I do them in my new environment? And you'll find that 90% of the time you can do the things that are already successful for you in online learning, and they'll continue to be successful.
Thank you. Debbie?
All right. Thank you. Great tips. So Mr. Conwell, last time we were talking, you ended by saying that your son was able to graduate debt-free. And I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, how was he able to do that? And I know that you said that, okay, yes, there was a subsidy, that you got from working for the denomination, but that doesn't even cover, excuse me, the majority of what that college tuition would be. So perhaps you can share with us some of the tips and tricks, so to speak, of how it is he was able to graduate debt-free.
Well, I am blessed to be married to an educator who collectively as parents, we took an interest in the education of our son. So from an early age, learning was something that he gravitated toward. I mean, he ended up being the salutatorian of his high school class. And basically, the opportunity to minimize the cost of a college education starts long before entering college. So by parents investing time in your children during the time that they are in school, especially during their high school year, well, I can't even say distinctly what time frame to start, but it should be throughout their existence, throughout their matriculation, through lower education, high school, secondary education. By investing time in them, allowing them to utilize their tools, their talents, expanding their mind, understanding what research is, and just being cognitive and critical in their thinking process. It will enhance their ability to navigate what is needed when it gets to become those pre-college years. And he obtained a scholastic scholarship that often just about every school offers. So depending on what type of grades, what type of testing, as Principal Forsey alluded to earlier, depending on the level of testing that you come into college or apply to college with, will determine what type of level, scholarship-wise, you can receive funding to start off your educational journey. Being the salutatorian, there was a scholarship that Oakwood provided, which I think many colleges will offer as long as there's a GPA or a propensity to show that you're an above average student. Your SAT and ACT scores automatically give you a certain level of scholarship funding that is provided just about every school there is. So the groundwork is done before applying for college. Specifically, your junior and senior years, you ratchet up your GPA. You now show a potential college counselor that, okay, within the past 2 years, we see a jump in your GPA, that you've improved and so on and so forth. We'd like to offer you a scholarship because of what we see. Often scholarships are offered in the STEM area: science, technology, engineering, and math. Those are 80% of the coursework that's offered in college. That's where the lion's share of scholarship funds go. So depending on what you bring has a direct bearing on what will be offered. He fortunately was a recipient of one of the top scholarships that Oakwood offered. So he earned his college funding by providing evidence that he was a good student. And that's what schools provide scholarships for. When you bring something to the table, basically allowing them to showcase the type of student that they're educating at their institution, they will provide you funds that will allow you to matriculate through, continuing on that journey and that path of your educational style and your desire to learn and to achieve throughout. And by showing that you are willing, capable, and present, you move forward toward obtaining what schools and institutions have to offer, just like all of the outside organizations that provide scholarships. If you prove that you're a capable student, they're willing to provide help for you.
Excellent. All right, so much. And perhaps you can talk about deadlines as well. I'm sure these scholarships, they have some kind of deadline. What do you want to tell us about?
Each and every deadline, each and every scholarship that you apply for has its own deadline. So within a scholarship that you research, from the time that you see the name of the scholarship, the requirements or criteria in order to find yourself eligible to even apply for the scholarship, you will also find that there is a deadline associated with that scholarship. Now, it may be renewable, but even renewable scholarships have deadlines. Each and every single scholarship has a deadline. What I will suggest staying away from are contests. Anything that simply asks you for your first and last name and email address is not a scholarship. They'll couch it as a contest, but basically now they have information to flood your email inbox with stuff.
Okay. Stuff, which sounds like probably junk. All right.
Pretty much.
Okay. And so need-based scholarships, which I'm guessing it's folks who just cannot afford to pay for a scholarship. What do you want to say about that?
Needs-based scholarships, well, it definitely has a bearing on what your household income is. Needs-based scholarships pretty much start at the maximum for households that basically earn $30,000 a year or less. And believe it or not, there's a lot of families and households that live in those conditions. Now, it's not to say because you may make $30,001 that you're not eligible for needs-based. It's just that your what they term EFC, expected family contribution, starts to be calculated in the level of scholarships and offerings, such as additional grants and things of that nature, which are also funds that you don't have to pay back. That calculation starts to vary, and the amount that may be offered may diminish, but it's still not to say that there's nothing available. There is never nothing available.
Right.
Oh,
Dr.
well,
Horton.
thank you. Thank you. All right, we have a few more questions as we continue on this afternoon. This next question is for Principal Forsey. In what appropriate ways can I or should I best stay connected with my online classmates?
Unmute your mic.
You're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry. That's a good question, and it depends on what kind of online learning you're doing. Some of you will be going to school online with the school that you've been attending in person, and so you will know the people and be able to keep in touch with them easily. But if you're going to a school where you don't know the people, it's very important to try to join in study groups, chat boards, discussions. Most learning platforms allow those kind of activities, or even being able to email or collaborate with other classmates on projects. And for some of the younger ones, there'll be things like story time, science labs. You can get class help or group studies, and probably even chapels where students attend and have discussions and get to know each other. So look online. I'm sure that the school that you're attending will have events listed on a calendar. And then so you look online and see what those are and try to join as many things as you can.
Good counsel. Thank you. Let's see what Mr. Conwell can share with us about what scholarships are available for transfer students, graduate students, and international students.
Well, my institution, Oakwood University, currently has a program in which they provide an instantaneous transfer scholarship of $10,000. Now, understanding, just because you're receiving money, that's not necessarily the only reason you choose an institution. Because let's just say in the case of Oakwood being a choice, you receive $10,000 for the first year that you're there, and it assists in a major way in paying for your bill. There's a year that's occurring after that. What steps are you taking to ensure that that $10,000 you received the first year is going to be replaced or substituted by some other means aside from that four-letter word of loan? What other means is that going to be replaced for these sequential years that you're attending? So there's an enormous amount of money, and again, understandable, as you matriculate through school, the further on in school that you go, the window of opportunity for the variety of scholarships that are available kind of, it closes a little bit. For international students, it's not a wide open situation where you just have oodles of money, as many of you I'm sure know. But one thing that you can definitely do is to look from within the country that you're coming from, what type of exchange process that the school may have with the United States. Mm-hmm. And if there's an exchange situation that is available, you can look for scholarships of organizations that provide funding for exchange programs. And that's one distinct way that you can research available funding, because again, even though exchange may not necessarily be something you're specifically trying to do, it's definitely an in-way or an inlet into getting to where you want to go. So again, there is money available for international students, and in many cases where scholarship providers ask you, to fill out a profile, basically providing them information of who you are, what you're about, plans, yada, yada, yada. And you being as transparent as possible, they in turn provide you with scholarship opportunities. If you happen to be an international student, I would suggest filling out those profiles, one, as a national student, as if you are a resident of the United States, and one, not being a resident of the United States. Because in many cases, scholarships that are on the main list of supposed residents of the United States, there are many scholarships that pertain to international students that may not necessarily have the criteria of you being or having to be a United States resident. So it's not to say that you're trying to circumvent the system. You're just trying to provide yourself with as much information and opportunities of scholarships that are out there. And it just so happens that some of the scholarships that you would otherwise apply for are only showing up on one list that happens to be on the list of residents versus international.
Thank you.
All right. I have a question for Mr. Kreiter. And so I guess students who are comfortable in the classroom, sharing, talking to the teacher, there is back and forth. And then when they're online, the environment is a little bit more challenging. They are not as willing to be as outspoken. What are some of the suggestions that you have for those students who tend to just kind of slip away when they're online?
Yeah, even when I'm meeting online with other educators, I find that this is a really common dynamic. A lot of people feel this way. So if you're feeling this way, you're definitely not alone. I say that because one of the greatest resources that you can have is finding some other students who may feel that way and finding a way to connect with them during class time, during learning time, whether that's through text messaging or through a chat feature built into your platform. So if you have a question or you're uncertain about something, you missed something, you have someone to talk to privately besides maybe the professor or asking something in front of the whole class. I know in my classes that I'm taking right now, usually there's always one person that I either know or within a few sessions realize that I feel comfortable with them. And sometimes I'll just send them a message outside of class just saying, hey, this semester, can you be someone that I can go to if I need help with anything, if I have a question? And I find that a lot of people are very open to that. And that way I have someone to talk to. If I miss something, instead of interrupting the whole class, I can just say, hey, I missed what the professor said. Can you help me out? Use the technological tools that you have to communicate with people through other means. The other thing is a lot of learning platforms offer a chat feature, a way to leave comments. So even if you're not comfortable speaking out loud, maybe you can have a comment down in the chat, and someone else who probably feels the same way as you and is just kind of in the background and quiet might communicate back through chat. I find that as I'm teaching a large online group, there's almost two classes going on. There's what's going on in the video as the teacher and students are exchanging that way, and then there's almost kind of a mini subclass going on in the chat section. And that's okay. It may feel a little weird at first, but use some of those text avenues, because I think we're often more comfortable communicating that way rather than speaking into a microphone or using our camera.
Excellent tips. Thank you so much for that. And so Principal Forsey, with this online environment, it becomes, you know, the student, there's an increased accountability for them. What suggestions do you have to be able to assist those students online?
Well, accountability is really important. And I would say that, first of all, you need to kind of have an idea in your mind what's going to make you accountable. I know I use a chart to try to help, because I have many duties that I need to finish throughout the day. So I keep a chart and check it off when I'm done, which is very helpful. I make sure that I review, and I suggest students review what their responsibilities are going to be, so that they can look at the big picture and not just what's going to happen that day, but the things they need to get done throughout. So the student is responsible for their learning in many ways, but it doesn't hurt to find someone, either a peer or someone that you look up to that could be a mentor, and kind of double check with you and verify with you that things are going really well. So I suggest that, but also just having your own little code of ethics of how you're going to do things properly is very helpful.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much. All right, Mr. Conwell. So my child is in school, but then my financial circumstances change. I'm not able to afford the college tuition. What are the options that a parent may have in that situation?
Well, what one can do, and that is more of a financial aid issue, but I know that there's a thing known as a professional judgment, in which you can communicate with your financial aid department of that institution and ask exactly what their method of informing them of your change status is. Actually, the professional judgment is just a brief explanation of what exactly did transpire within your financial situation regarding your income, whether you lost your job or incapacitated or whatever the case may be, the business folded. That in itself has made a change in your family dynamics instantaneously. What you would have to do is communicate with the financial aid department of the institution, make them aware of that, and they will provide you means of telling your story that could potentially put you in a situation that can provide funding, such as Pell Grants and things of that nature, that would not otherwise be available to you because of the income that you once were earning. So it's all about communication and being as transparent as possible.
Well, thank you for that. Mr. Kreiter, can you share some pitfalls that I should avoid and be aware of as an online learner?
Yeah, I think probably the most common pitfall that we run into as online educators is when technology is unreliable. So the first thing to do is, before you even start class, do the best that you can to come up with a reliable computer and a reliable internet connection. You know, if finances are challenges, there's actually different organizations that work to help provide discounted internet connections, to provide discounted computers. You know, a lot of the major ISP providers do that. But even with the best preparations, technology goes wrong. I think we've all probably been there. And no matter how well you try and what great stuff you have, sometimes things don't work. And so I would say make sure that you have a backup plan. So if you have a power outage at your house, a storm comes through, whatever, your computer just all of a sudden smoke starts pouring out of it, make sure that you know what you're going to do next before it happens. So maybe you have a relative or a friend's house that you can go to, or some sort of public space with an internet connection. Maybe you know somebody who can fix computers or has a computer you can borrow, but don't wait for the crisis to happen before you start figuring out what you're going to do about it. Every piece of technology that you rely on can, and if you do it long enough, probably will fail you in some way. And I don't want to alarm you, but come up with a plan and follow it through, and you won't be stressed. You won't miss a beat. The other big thing is if a student's struggling in the classroom, the teacher often picks up on it and they can address it. But if you're struggling in an online class, there's a good chance that you're not going to be noticed right away, or because maybe the teacher doesn't really notice that you're struggling until they realize, wow, this student hasn't turned in an assignment in a really long time. So you have to go and kind of build connections with the teacher outside of class so that they know who you are, they know your face, they know your name, they know what to expect from you, so that if you're having challenges, you know where to go and who to talk to, and they know to look out for you and make sure that they're meeting their obligations as an educator to look out for you.
Very, very helpful tips. Thank you so much for those.
Excellent tips. And, as we wrap up with the final questions, you mentioned, Mr. Conwell, financial aid, financial aid packages. And so if I get scholarships, how does that affect my financial aid? What is that, that package that comes together between the financial aid and the scholarships? How do you balance all of those?
Well, they're all one and the same. They just have their different origins. They're there to help pay for your education. In many cases, outside scholarships will benefit you hands down. Not a problem. I mean, if you're being awarded from outside sources, that's fabulous. Now, how that may affect your financial aid package and what you're receiving from the institution that you're attending, because institutions themselves have limited funds and they try to spread their funding around to the students who have greater need. If you happen to have been one of those who are in need and you're receiving funds from the institution, but you happen to be blessed by receiving additional funds from outside agencies that are allowing you to pay for your education, and let's just say you are blessed tremendously and you end up exceeding the cost of your education. Okay, cost of your education, $10,000. The school may be providing you a $2,000 or $1,500 scholarship just to attend. In many cases, for the simple fact that if it's something that you came in on and they presented to you as a scholarship, you should be able to keep that funding as well as the scholarships that you're receiving from the outside, and you just happen to have a credit balance on your account. But now if you are given a specialized scholarship because of a need, and it's a one-time situation because of your current situation, and throughout the semester, you then are blessed with scholarship opportunities from the outside coming in, and you exceed the cost of your education, an institution may say, well, we're not going to give you this particular scholarship because it was a need-based situation. In this case, you no longer need it. We're going to give it to someone else who needs it. So depending on the type of scholarship that you're receiving from your institution, if it's an academic scholarship that you came in to the institution on, and you will be provided that throughout the years that you matriculate through school, there shouldn't be anything that affects your receiving that particular scholarship. But let's say from year to year, you're struggling, situations aren't, necessarily as lucrative as they had been, and you're in need, and the school somehow provides you, let's say, what they might term a worthy student scholarship. If somehow within the semester, subsequently you receive additional funding through scholarships that you're awarded, an institution may take that worthy student scholarship back because you are no longer you're not in need. So they could potentially take their funds and provide it to someone else who is in more need or currently in a situation that you no longer are in.
So I just kind of wanted to follow up, Mr. Conwell, on that because of the hundreds of scholarships that are available to students, Latino students, students of different ethnocultural groups. And how do they begin to disseminate through those scholarship opportunities that they could access online and whittle it down to, especially if they're not sure what they want to major in, they may not even at that point know what they're really good at and have a sense as to what their major. How do they handle and process these the many scholarships that they can possibly access online? How do they disseminate through that to narrow it down to a manageable amount of scholarships that they can process and apply for?
Well, by utilizing the tool of scholarship providers, and one in particular that is just close to me because I just like their format. Scholarships.com is a scholarship provider in which you register as a student, and within the profile that they provide you to fill out, you attempt to be as transparent as you possibly can. Your likes, your dislikes, some of your family background, someone might be in the service, it'll ask a variety of questions. It literally is a profile. And according to the information that you provide them, they will in turn do the legwork for you in providing you a list of scholarships that, according to the information that you provided them, they feel that you are eligible to apply for. From that list, you then start your work and going through potentially each and every single one of them. Because again, the scholarship search is like a job search. If you're serious about working, you're never going to just put one resume out there. If you're serious about getting scholarship funding for your education, you're going to put more than one scholarship application out there. You're going to put more than 10 scholarship applications out there. You're going to put more than 50 scholarship applications out there, because just like a job situation, it's a numbers thing. The more tentacles you have out there, the more opportunities will fall into place. It's just like going to a bank. You take money, you put it in a bank. The interest that you are going to get as a return on your investment is going to be a lot less than what you'd like it to be, but it's still going to be a return. And the more you put in, the more you'll get out. So the more you put out there as opportunities, the more feedback you'll receive. But these scholarships are not miracles. It takes work, it takes effort, it takes energy, it takes follow through, and the investment that you put in on the front end by achieving scholarship funds prevents you from having to expend energy, time, your future on the back end, paying back those loans that you chose to take out.
I say amen to that. That is certainly a fact. Thank you for sharing that. Certainly, and of course, it all, captures the whole encouragement that we have to be good stewards. So certainly, it takes hard work on the front end, but the rewards are huge and later on. Our next question is for Principal Forsey, and it has to do with the importance of communication for online learners. In what ways can I foster a healthy relationship with my teachers or my professors? How do I go about it?
So keep in mind that your teachers chose this profession because they like young people and they actually want to hear from you and be involved in your life and make a difference. I'm going to go back to our introduction where I talked about sitting in the front row virtually. I actually am hoping to share a link with you of an article that deals with sitting in the front row. But some of those things might involve things like, well, turning on your camera during a video conference and showing that you're listening and nodding your head and really being involved in the conversations that go on in the video conferencing. Raise your hand and ask a question. Feel free to email the teacher and ask questions. Sometimes I have students from Griggs International Academy that just send me a quick note telling me to have a happy Sabbath. And that really makes my day. So emailing, texting them, asking questions, even asking for help. Teachers like that. Mm-hmm. And so sit in the front row so that you can be involved and know your teacher. We find at Griggs that students do better if they have a relationship with the teacher.
Thank you. And I see the website here on the screen, so hopefully that's accessed. Good ideas. Deb? Push it to Debbie now. Oh, go ahead. Were you going to say something? Ben? Oh, okay. All right. The next question is for Debbie. Well, Debbie will ask the next question. I know she's frozen or not, but I'll go ahead and ask it. What percentage of graduates leave without the debt, Mr. Conwell?
Most recent statistics, I think going up to 2017, just short of 30% of college students, I'm not even going to say graduates, leave without any debt. Upwards of 80% or 85% of college students apply for some type of federal aid. And in many cases, they may have minimal loans. I mean, for the most part, the average individual coming out of school now, let's just say in the state of Alabama, they're exiting school with, on average, $30,000 in debt. A little bit above $30,000 in debt. Now, my son, who happened to be one of those individuals who were a loan recipient, fortunately was able to pay for his loan before his graduation date. So officially, as a statistic, he left school debt-free, but it's not to say that he didn't obtain debt during the time that he was in school. So even if one does somehow find themselves in need of a source that they otherwise would not want to take, such as a loan, it's possible that it can be paid back during the time that you're in school. But on the average, to answer your question, approximately 30% end up separating from school because many of those that separate do not necessarily finish. But in separating from school, approximately 30% leave without having any debt. So the majority of people end up leaving school with debt of some sort. Well, 1.6 trillion lets you know that there's a whole lot of folks that have left school with debt.
Sure. Thank you. Well, we have a few minutes, and we want to encourage, if you haven't had a chance to ask a question on social media, to do so now, in our final minutes. But I'm going to just ask the panelists, are there any final thoughts they may have that maybe was not that were not addressed in the questions that we asked, or that came out of a comment that was made that they would love to follow up on in just a brief comment?
I'll say something.
Yeah. Sure.
I just encourage you to not be afraid to try online learning. Students who, even when it's not COVID-19, many students, part of their education involves online learning nowadays, just so that you can have flexibility. And you might be going to brick and mortar school too, but don't be afraid of it, and do your best at putting all this together. That's the way the world is now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that tip. Ben?
Yeah, I'll maybe add into that. I think because of all of the turmoil in education in the past few months and the coming months, I think there's actually not ever been a better time to start online education than there is right now. Tremendous amounts of effort and resources are pouring in. A lot of people are starting online learning at the same time. Not just students, but educators as well are experiencing this for the first time. And so I think understanding and sympathy for challenges are at an all-time high. So, if you're trying to decide, do I want to dip my toes in? I really think there's no better time than now.
Thank you. I see a question from Facebook. Shannon Kramer has asked the question, when do I start looking for scholarships? I think we addressed that early on, but Mr. Conwell, if you could maybe give some guidance. She's in the junior year of high school. Oh, she's asking in the junior year of high school or the senior year of high school. When does she start?
If she's in her junior year, start today. Because there's no time that is a bad time to look for scholarship funding. By starting off early on in high school, there's even organizations and programs that you can start looking for scholarships as young as 8th grade. But as a junior and a senior, it's a perfect time to start establishing connections with organizations. As Principal Forsey indicated earlier, that just creating a foundation of organization, creating a spreadsheet of the organizations that you communicate with, the type of scholarships that they offer, any individuals that you may contact with, their website, if there's an email address attached to someone who's affiliated with the scholarship program. Start to communicate with your high school counselors, your writing counselors, trying to obtain better communication skills through the written word, to be able to express yourself in a more concise fashion where you're not being wordy or putting in fluff trying to fill a page up on yourself. I mean, it should be easy to express yourself within an essay, within a page, not having to feel like you have to fabricate or make yourself interesting. Nobody can tell your story better than you can. And each and every person that has been blessed by God to breathe air on this earth has a story to tell. Tell your story. Find ways to make it creative and interesting. I mean, because you're more than a name and an age and a birth date. The things that you have experienced throughout life, the challenges, the achievements. So just by expressing who you are and giving someone on the other side whose job it is to hand away money, what you have to do and understand your job to be is to convince them to give it to you.
Thank you. We have a question that came in from Esperanza Clavilla, and it has to do with she appreciates that education is very good, but she wants to know if the cost of studies can be paid for with the currency of her country. And I imagine she didn't indicate what country, but if anyone could answer that.
Sure, currency is currency. I mean, there may be an exchange cost involved. I mean, we have many Canadian students that come to Oakwood. We're probably about a good 30% international on our campus, easy. And if not immediate students, definitely generationally, a generation behind or what have you. So, I mean, you have Bermuda, you have the Caribbean islands, you have Canada, we have Africa. I mean, so all countries have their own currency. Now, it may have an exchange rate situation, but all money spends everywhere.
Thank you. Any closing thoughts, Debbie?
This has been wonderful, very educational. And so I thank the panelists so much for taking the time to teach and to share the information that they have. So thank you so much.
And so on behalf of the 75 plus schools in the Lake Union, our 7 boarding academies, our director, Linda Fuchs, and our team, Sue and Carmen and Sherry in our office, on behalf of the communications department, Gary and Debbie and Felicia, we are so grateful for this opportunity to have this conversation. Very important. We are moving into new territory systemically. Online learning has been around for a while. The leaders at Great know that well. But if we are doing it more on a broader scale, certainly something that we can all learn more about how we can be more efficient, effective, and so we can have the best outcome with online learning. And certainly with students graduating with tens of thousands of dollars in debt, the question of how can we secure financial assistance early on, starting from middle school, elementary, middle school, building those skills and that academic acuity that will help them when they apply for their scholarships while they're still in high school, to be able to access those monies that are waiting to be accessed, whether they are financial assistance coming from the denomination for minority groups, or whether they are from other businesses, as Mr. Conwell has indicated. The money is there. We need to access it, and to access it in a very deliberate manner, so that we can reduce the indebtedness and be good stewards as God has allowed us. And the Bible tells us the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. And so why not embark and embrace that fullness that is there. So thank you, online viewers. Thank you to our panelists. As Debbie has indicated, thank you so much. Thank you to Carmen, who's behind the scenes, and Veronica, who's assisting her. We appreciate you immensely. We hope that this this is going to be archived, so it could be referenced for the future for those who weren't able to join this afternoon. We'd like to end up with a word of prayer, and so I'm going to ask Mr. Kreiter to have a closing prayer for us.
Yeah, after this time period of thanks, I thought it'd be fitting if we thank God as we close our session. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for the multitude of people and organizations who are committed to spending their money to help others achieve an education. And for all those watching who need financial support to get through their educational goals, I ask that you help connect them with those people and those resources so that they can achieve an education and use it to serve you and your kingdom. We also thank you for technology, which has opened up new avenues of education that previously we could only dream of. And for people who are interested in online education, I ask that you guide them and help them know if online education is right for them, and if so, what kind. Give all of us wisdom and understanding as we grow into this new era of education. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you all, and may God bless you.
Thank you.
God bless you too.
Bye-bye now.